Most people think Amazon makes money from retail. Wrong. The real empire isn't in shipping boxes, it is in hosting civilization. Government, startups, apps you use sit on the same silent foundation. Amazon Web Services, or AWS, the invisible empire that runs the world. Now let's decode one of the most understated empires in modern history. Amazon Web Services. If you stripped the logos off the internet and looked underneath, you would see one monolith holding it all together. Government, defense systems, social media platforms, AI companies, even some billion-dollar funds, all running quietly inside Amazon's digital fortress. AWS launched in 2006, and Jeff Bezos described it as renting out spare capacity. Now, while everyone fought for users, he built the architecture that they would all depend on. And here's the strategic genius. AWS is the opposite of flashy. No consumer-facing hype, no brand personality, because true power hides in infrastructure. It is the empire behind every empire. Now consider this. Netflix streams from AWS. Zoom runs on AWS. Even parts of the US government rely on AWS. That is not business. That is asymmetric sovereignty. The brilliance of AWS lies in its paradox. It owns nothing visible but controls everything essential. That is how modern empires operate, invisibly. While you argue about which social media platform is winning, AWS quietly invoices every one of them. They do not compete for attention, they charge rent for it. And the business model is pure empire logic. Scalable, dependable, extractive. Every startup that scales AWS. Every innovation built on the cloud is built inside Bezos' empire. So, here is the uncomfortable truth. You do not use AWS. AWS uses you. It watches the digital economy breathe. It serves its service humming like a global nervous system. It can see which sectors are rising, which are falling, which industries are scaling, and which are failing. That is not data. That is predictive leverage. AWS isn't just infrastructure, it is intel. And that is what separates an empire from a corporation. Empires do not just profit from the system, they monitor it. Now, most companies that try to build its own server farm realized it is cheaper to surrender than to compete. So they did, one by one. And in that surrender, AWS built the modern equivalent of a digital Rome, not through conquest, but through convenience. Now, here is the strategic law. When dependence becomes invisible, it becomes irreversible. AWS doesn't have to lobby government, it hosts them. It doesn't have to compete for industries, it houses them. It doesn't have to win headlines, it writes the back end. And when the internet goes down, it is not the internet that failed, it is AWS that sneezed. That is the kind of quiet, omnipotent reserve for gods and data centers. For empire builders, of course, watching this, take note. The loudest company builds market. The quietest one builds the market's foundation. AWS didn't sell product. It sold dependency disguised as scalability. It turned the cloud into a utility. And utilities never die. They just become the background of human progress. AWS is the empire you never logged into, but you never log out of either.